Hi guys, today's video is on snare wires, but it's also on just snare drum sounds. If you've watched the channel for any length of time, you probably noticed that I've become kind of obsessed with taking my existing snare drums and trying to make them sound different. Which, every snare drummer has a quiver of snare drums. I have like 6 or 8 of them. But, you know, I've noticed that if you put the same heads, hoops, and wires onto any given shell, it kind of sounds the same, especially if you tune it the same way. And that's a little bit disappointing because manufacturers and the media would like you to think that all the different shell materials make a huge difference. They do a little bit, but not really. Those peripheral items that you put onto the drum actually change the sound more, I think. And so I've been working with that lately. Obviously you can always change the heads, but I think that wires and hoops make more of a difference than people think. It started out a couple years ago. I got a drum with the Sonic Saver hoops, which flange in, they're Mapex thing. And then I got S hoops, which also flange in, that's in a head thing. And I compared those at one point, some video, to regular triple flanged hoops. And then I started getting into different snare wires, and we're going to see again today about some snare wires. Just because if you're looking for an alternative sound, buying a whole new drum sometimes just isn't the thing that makes the most difference. Most people are familiar with this type of snare wire. It's the coiled steel wires, and they're sort of just attached at the ends by these plates. And you put a strap or some cords through there, and you put them against the resonant head. Then you have a snare drum. You can buy 1,000 different types of these, and they will make a difference. If you buy different regular coiled snare wires, your snare will sound different. However, that's not the only choice, and so today we're going to talk about some a little bit out there other choices. So I had a video on this drum recently, and it is a Mapex M series drum set snare that I turned into a concert snare drum, partially by changing the heads and the hoops, but also by putting on these uncoiled straight cable snare wires from Grover. And they make a difference. Part of the entire package, they really do help it dry out and become more of a concert snare than a drum set snare. So that's one type of alternative snare wire that you can use. Of course, you just buy it. They're kind of expensive. These were like 35 bucks for a set of snare wires, where you can get the coily ones for like 15 or 20. So anyway, that's one, but I got some more out there ones I'll show you. So I figure if you can use straight wires like those Grovers, and they look kind of like guitar strings, what if you just use guitar strings? So that's what I did to this drum. If you've been watching the channel, you've seen this drum. It's made out of a child's bass drum, and it's got 6 single tension lugs on it at this point. And it had regular snare wires on it, but it never really sounded quite right, I didn't think. So I've tried to put guitar strings literally off of a classical guitar that I just had to restring anyway. And half of them are the wound metal wires and half of them are the nylon. A lot of marching drums use nylon as in synthetic gut. So I thought I'd go half and half for more response. We'll listen to this later. You can tell me how well that you think it worked. And I'll maybe show you a couple of the steps that I did to put those on. And I think maybe the most interesting type of snare wire that we'll talk about today is this one. You can immediately see they're bright green, although they don't have to be. They could be really any color. But this is trimmer line from a weed eater or a weed whacker, depending on what part of the country you're from. So a weed trimmer line actually can make a good synthetic gut snare wire. And I didn't make this up. I got this from another drum teacher named James Brandt from the East Coast, and he actually explained to me how to do it. So this is his process, not mine. It does actually work. He recommends using the .080 trimmer line, although I think you could experiment with the different sizes and shapes of trimmer line that are out there. But realistically, when you do it, if you're going to do it right, you got to have one of these old school strainers that has the holes for the actual gut snares. So this is a P83 Ludwig Strainer, which you will find on old Superphonics and Acrylites and stuff, but only the really old ones. And they upgraded to the P85, and then maybe there's another P something now, which doesn't have this. So you got to get one of these old ones. Now Slingerland and Leedy and all those other old school companies, they also made strainers like this. So if you have a strainer like this, or you can get one on eBay, it's way easier to mess around with alternative snare wires. So this drum is new to the channel, so I think I should talk about it a little bit. This is a 15-inch diameter by 12-inch depth, which is gigantic. 1960s Keystone Badge Ludwig marching snare drum. It's 8 lug. It's meant for low tension heads, not the Kevlar stuff. It does, of course, have this P83 strainer and the trimmer line wire that we just talked about. It's in this fantastic red sparkle, which is not doing that well, but I didn't really want to like wet sand on it for hours and get it shined up. So I didn't. It's just going to look the way it looks. And of course I put this vintage wooden hoop on here. I bought this hoop with a bunch of other hoops that you've seen on other drums in this video, in fact. And I got like a lot of 4, 3 of them were 14, one was a 15, and this is the first 15-inch drum I've ever owned of any type. So of course it went on here, because why not? And again, I'm trying to emulate sort of an orchestral sound with this drum. So I've got the Evans Strata head on here. I went for the 1000 on this giant drum as opposed to the 700 that I put on this drum. It's just for a little bit of a different timbre. And of course, I don't do any orchestral or concert playing, but being the nut that I am, I've decided that now I needed a concert snare and a concert field drum to sort of complete the set, and I have that. So of course, we'll see what this sounds like here in a minute, but that's what this drum is, and I'll probably be playing it again later on the channel. I'm going to start with this drum for the sound test. We're going to play March number 7 out of my translation of Tambour Ordonnance of 1917, and the microphone's going to be on the ground, or below the drum, in order to pick up more of the snare response, which is what we're trying to check. Okay, so you can clearly hear that even though they don't all sound the same, they sound different in different ways, and none of them sound like the regular coiled snare wires. This might be good or bad from your perspective, depends on the sound you want, I think. But I think that at least some of these worked out pretty well. The guitar strings, not so much. I think maybe if I was going to try that again, I would get some like fishing monofilament or something so that they were all the same diameter, or just buy a bunch of the same size guitar string. And maybe it's just a problem with that drum, because I kind of made that myself, and we know that I'm not that handy. But otherwise, I think the trimmer line thing works. I've also heard you could use tennis racket string, so that's something that maybe somebody out there could try. I didn't do it this time. And of course, I didn't try the same drum with a bunch of different types of strings on it, because setting these things up is really difficult. Like getting that trimmer line on there, I kind of glossed over how hard it is. It requires pliers and the application of heat, and it's not really an easy task. So I wasn't going to pop them off and try something else instead, because that would be insane. So that's pretty much on there forever. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I will be playing more on these drums later. You'll see them again. Buy a book, support the channel. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.